people. Thank you so much, Mark, for inviting me and for that wonderful introduction. I'm really, really happy to be here with you all. I was just saying to a few people that we get a lot of hate and negativity online, so it's really great. It's really motivating, inspirational. Can you not hear me in the back? Should I stand closer? Can you all hear me? Ooh, yeah, you can hear me now, right? I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming here today. It's really great to see and to meet so many positive, wonderful, affirming faces and people. It can get really dark and dreary doing what I do, and so this fulfills me for like another year. Thank you. Yeah,
come to this side.
All right. I'm not sure which mic is working now. Here. I want to walk around though.
Yeah, walk around with that one.
Yeah. He's Saudi male, so trying to tell me what to do. I always like to start off my presentations with sharing this photograph with you. This is a photograph that exemplifies everything, the reason why I do what I do. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a Syrian woman leaving ISIS territory. And I just love this photograph because of, like, look at it, she's taking off her niqab and her hijab there. Niqab is the black covering of the face, and hijab is the one on the head, and then also the abaya, which is the cloak. So she's ripping all that off. And underneath, she's got such a colorful dress on. And that symbolism is just so beautiful. And her husband is so happy for her, and her son is going to get to see this free mom, you know. And if you look at her face, you can see that she's doing that ululating sound. That's exactly what she's doing. Thank you, Rivka. And that's a sound that is made when you're really, really happy, really, really excited about something. You usually hear it at weddings and things like that. So this is basically my life in a nutshell. I don't have any photographs like this, but this is pretty much what happened to me. So I know what she's feeling right now. I didn't have such a precise moment, but I went through that same journey of ripping all that off and letting myself out from underneath all of that. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about my journey. This here is the mosque that I attended, and actually it was a school that I attended growing up in Vancouver, Canada. So this it's a big, beautiful mosque that was paid for by the Saudis. When they started to pay for this mosque, the first thing they did was get rid of our imam who was from India and put in an imam who was from Egypt. And that imam's wife wore the niqab. And we'd never seen that before. So as kids, we're running around going, "Oh my God, it's a ninja!" Of course, now almost everybody in the community is covered up like her. So these two front doors here, these beautiful ornate doors, that's the men's entrance. The women's entrance was in the back off the kitchen next to the dumpsters. That's where I went to school. So I went to school here for grades 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the reason why it was those years is because it was only built when I was in grade 4. Before that, it hadn't been built. And they had only built an elementary school. They hadn't built a high school yet. So when it was time for me to go to high school, I got to go to a public school. And I was really, really excited that I was finally going to be let out of this, you know, this tiny little, it wasn't really a school, right? We were being taught by parents. So it was basically homeschooling, but we were all together. The whole purpose of this Islamic school was to keep the Muslim kids away from the heathen society that we were living in. So it was just to separate us so we didn't get any evil liberal ideas, right? But I got the evil liberal ideas when I went to high school in grade 8. This is my school photograph picture. So by now I've been wearing the hijab for about 5 years or so, because it was put on me when I was 9 years old. So I was really happy to finally be going to high school, but I was actually pretty nervous too, because obviously I'd be the only girl or the only child wearing a hijab at the school, and I was afraid, like, how am I going to get treated? Am I going to get bullied? What's going to happen? Nothing happened. I loved it. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. I made lots of friends. Nobody was ever mean to me. Nobody ever said anything. In fact, people were extra nice to me because they wanted to make sure that they didn't come off as bigots or racists. I'm from Canada, right? Everybody there is super nice. But I also like to point out in this photograph, you'll notice the unibrow. That's because it's haram, it's forbidden for women to even pluck the hair off of their face. So that's just one of the, just to show how restrictive the religion is. You can't even decide, what your face is going to look like. Of course, you can remove hair off your legs or anywhere else, that's fine. But for some whatever reason, it's the eyebrows. You do that, you're going to burn in hell. So now I want to just give you like an overview of what it was like to grow up in this conservative Muslim community. My mom was the head of the Islamic Studies department at this Islamic school that you saw, because she was a student of Al-Azhar University. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that university. It's in Egypt. And it's a Sunni university. It's extremely conservative. And she was a student there, and she was the leader of the Islamic Studies department, or the head of the Islamic Studies department. So, I had a very strict upbringing at school and at home. And rather than just go into all these details about what that was like, I thought I'd play this video for you here, and just a little bit of background. Armin Nevabi, who Mark mentioned, is one of my co-hosts in the Secular Jihadist podcast, was writing an article, and he asked me, what was it like for you to live as a Muslim woman? And so I wrote something down for him, and he was like, oh my God, that's great, you have to share that. So I shared it on Facebook, and then Lalo Dagash, who is another one of our warriors, saw that post, and he said, I want to do something with it. So this is what he did with it. Let's hope it works. Yay.
Islam ensnares every moment of a Muslim's life. How you eat, how you go to the bathroom, how you put on shoes, how you have sex. Every single aspect of your life is mapped out so that there's minimal opportunity to think. You are trained to just follow. Do as you're told. Don't ask why. Get in line with the rest of the Ummah, community of Muslims. Like a school of fish, it's instinctual. That's the way it is. That's the way the brainwashing goes. Like a soldier trained to take orders and react. Thinking is deadly. Questioning is punished. This is much more true for women than it is for men. Under Islam, a woman's sense of agency is non-existent. Her individuality is completely erased, or rather, never given an opportunity to flourish in the first place. Sometimes, like it was for me, the statement is both literal as well as figurative. My entire being was dampened by a black shroud, covered from head to toe, without even my eyes connecting with the outside world. I float around other humans almost like a ghost. I could see them, but they couldn't see me. I was invisible. My humanity was completely eradicated. I wasn't Yasmine. I was a faceless figure shrouded in black. My wants, needs, interests, desires, preferences were never even considered, least of all by me. I didn't know that there was such thing as choice. I'd never made a decision. I just did as I was told. I was miserable, but my misery also made me feel guilty. Why couldn't I move along with the other fish? Why did I yearn to escape their hold? Wasn't this the path to heaven? Any other direction was hell. Why wasn't I strong enough to fight the devil luring me to imagine a life where I could swim in different waters? Islam is ingenious in its hold. Aspects of its tactics can be found in Mormonism, in Scientologists, and Jehovah's Witnesses. But Islam is the only religion that combines all the different ensnaring elements into one, and then turns up the intensity tenfold. Islam's hold on your body, mind, and spirit is such that almost 15 years after denouncing the religion, I'm still discovering and suffering from remnant conditioning of my mind. I don't think I'll ever be truly free. I was only able to free my body. But I have not failed. My daughters are free. My daughters will never be able to relate to or understand any of this world. They will listen with wide eyes, unable to fathom that existence. And so, even if I have to take this indoctrination with me to the grave, I don't mind. I'm happy to take it with me 6 feet under, far away from my daughters, where it can't hurt anyone else from my bloodline. They'll all be free to swim in any direction they choose.
Let's call it a round of applause. So as you can see here, I'm wearing the niqab, which I brought one here for show and tell. And I'm going to show you how it goes on, and then I'm going to pass it around. There's a common sentiment that you hear all the time that people say, it's their culture, they want to wear it, they like it. Or even worse, you'll hear people say, it's empowering, it makes them feel good, they love it, or whatever. So I'm going to pass this around, and I'm hoping that everybody, men and women, will try it on and just wear it for a few seconds, but let me know if you feel empowered. It's actually 2 parts. I've thrown away all of my hijabs. I didn't know I was going to do this, 15 years in the future. The only reason why I kept this one is because one of my students made it for me. I used to teach in Qatar in the Middle East. One of my students made it for me. She got it stitched with a maple leaf. And so I was like, oh, I can't throw that one away. So you're lucky. So I've got one there, but I'm going to put the whole getup on for you. So this is the hijab. I'm going to try and do this without getting heart palpitations. So it starts out like this. Then you wrap it around. And you tuck it in there. That's part 1. And then this is part 2. What was that? I mean, I did it for 20 years, muscle memory, right? More than 20. And then this is the second part. You tie it on like this. And then if you're amongst only women or family members that are men, you can remove the first layer like this. Oh wait, hold on. Maybe I am out of practice. Okay, I'm seriously supposed to. Oh, I put it on backwards. Damn it.
We should be happy about that.
Yeah. Okay, that's the. Hold on. Okay, there it is. Like that. And then, with the first layer, you can actually see my eyes. So you can only do this if I'm in company of women or men that are part of my family or my husband or whatever. So, I actually couldn't even wear like a scarf, like a winter scarf for many years. because just the idea of having fabric around my neck would stress me out so much. But I'm better now. I just wore my very first scarf a few years ago, actually. So I'm going to pass it around for you. For those of you who are claustrophobic, you're really going to get a sense of how I'm feeling right now. One of my friends, Orly Petter, her and I have an interview, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, she tried this whole thing on, like the gloves, and you guys know Orly? Oh, microphone. Sorry about that. So I was just going to mention that my friend Orly Petter, who is a neuropsychologist, here you go, you can try that on. She tried on the whole getup, so the hijab, the niqab, the abaya, the gloves, the socks, everything. She was doing a photo op with Asra Nomani. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. She's a Muslim reformer. So they thought they would do it just for fun. But because Orly is a neuropsychologist, of course, she's thinking about all of this and what it must feel like to wear this all the time. And she said, every single one of your senses is muted. Oh, thank you. So you can't touch things properly, you can't hear things properly, you can't be heard properly, you can't see properly. Like, every bit of your senses is in some way hindered. So it's really, really hard to explain how you really are invisible. You're subhuman. The way I described it is that I said I felt like my soul was rotting under that niqab. So you don't have to try and put on both parts because that's too confusing. The first part is bad enough. Well done. You did better than me. Do you want to stand up and show everybody your beautiful face? Look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. As a Muslim right now, we would be like, MashaAllah, your face is lit up, you know. Yes.
It's so late for when you're out on a hot day.
It's pretty hot under there. Actually, that's a good question because I was a kid and one of my neighbors asked my mom, again, super polite Canadian, aren't you hot wearing that? And my mom said, hell is hotter. So that shut down my neighbor. No more questions. So when I was about 19 years old, I was forced into a marriage with this man. His name is Assam Marzouk. This is a picture of him behind bars in prison. He was sentenced to 15 years hard labor for being a member of Al-Qaeda.
There's a little stamp under there.
Yeah. So again, just to sort of condense this as quickly as possible for you, a journalist asked me, can you explain what it was like being married to him? And the question was, you mentioned that you were forced to marry a member of Al-Qaeda, and on your website you say that this particular one was bailed out of prison by Osama bin Laden himself. Can you give us an idea of what day-to-day life is like being married to an Al-Qaeda fighter, especially as a teenager? And I responded, it's been almost 20 years since I escaped, and that question instantly put a knot in my stomach and filled my eyes with tears. I don't know how to accurately describe this to you. I suppose the best analogy I can think of is suffocation. Have you ever had that moment of panic because you swallowed something the wrong way and now you're coughing and you can't catch your breath? Expand that moment into years, and that's probably the best way I can describe it. So after being married to him for so many years, I finally got away from him. It's a long story, but one day my book will be published. The book is called From Al-Qaeda to Atheism, and I'll go through all the details, but basically I got away from him, and I got away from my mom, and I had a little baby girl with me, but then I started going to university, which also I wasn't allowed to go to university before, but Now I was going to do everything I wasn't allowed to do. And when I was in university, I took a course called History of Religions. It was just an elective course. And I thought, well, I went to Islamic schools for a good chunk of my life, and I know a lot about at least this one religion, and it was about Christianity, Judaism, and Christianity and Islam mostly. So I thought, well, you know what, I'll know a third of the topic, maybe I'll get an easy A, you know. Little did I know that that course was going to change my life. So that course was being taught by a professor who was from Lebanon, a Christian from Lebanon, an ex-Christian from Lebanon. So he really understood my context. He really understood Muslims, and he really understood Arabs. So when he spoke to me, he knew how to communicate with me. And from that course is when I learned that this book that I thought was so divine, that I was taught was the absolute Word of God that was sent with Archangel Gabriel to Muhammad in a cave, written down word for word. You can never, if you put it down on the table, you can't put anything on top of it. Don't you dare ever put it on the floor. I mean, you have to clean yourself before you can even touch this book. It was so divine. And I realized, oh my God, it's totally plagiarized. And so that was the first thread that started for my whole belief system to unravel. Because I was a very believing Muslim. I'm what people these days are calling Salafi or Wahhabi Muslim. So the Saudi Arabian type of Muslim, which is basically a literalist. We read the Quran word for word. You follow it as closely as possible. You aim to live your life as closely as possible to the way Muhammad lived it. And that's when I started to realize that all of these things that had happened to me in my life had nothing to do with family or circumstances or whatever. It all had one source, and that one source was Islam. So whether it's child abuse, because there's a hadith about hitting your children if they don't memorize the Quran or if they don't pray, whether it's forced marriage, whether it's accepting that your husband beats you and it's his right, whether it's accepting that your husband rapes you and it's his right. Lots of different things. Some of these things happened to me. Some of the other things didn't, like FGM, female genital mutilation, or honor killings. Lots of different aspects that we hear about, stories here and there. But the common thread in all of these, I learned then, was, oh my God, it's all from this scripture right here. And so I eventually had the courage to leave the religion. Of course, it was a process, right? First it's like, I'm not a religious Muslim, and then it was like, I don't like religions, but I'm spiritual but not religious, and then I'm agnostic, and some of you might relate to that whole, it takes a while before you can be like, you know what, I'm an atheist. And so I started to do some writing. I wanted to, now I'm giving you my secrets. I'm going to show you my website, which, as Mark mentioned, this hall started out called Confessions of an Ex-Muslim because I was keeping myself quasi-anonymous. That's Ayan! And that's her signing her book for me. And I was sort of anonymous in the beginning, but then I got contacted by so many people from the Muslim world that were like, that's so awesome that you get to speak out, that you're speaking for us. I'm in Saudi Arabia or in Bangladesh or in Pakistan or in India or Indonesia or wherever, and they can't speak out, or Malaysia. They can't speak out because they literally fear for their life. Like there's no First Amendment in any of those countries, right? There are blasphemy laws. And so, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like Mashal Khan is a student in Pakistan who just asked a very basic question one day in class. He said, so if Adam and Eve were the first two human beings, does that mean we're all children of incest? And they thought that was such a blasphemous question that when he went back to his dorm room that night, he was attacked by his peers, by the other students in the university, dragged him out of his room and beat him to death. And the police officers were there to block any students that tried to protect Mashal Khan. And then in Bangladesh, there are stories of bloggers in Maldives, bloggers, being stabbed to death. Raif Badawi is in prison, etc., 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 etc. So I thought to myself, well, if they can't speak out, and I'm choosing not to for fear of my own life or my family's, then who will? Right? We're all going to be scared into silence. We're all going to bow to these bullies. Over there, they have no choice. Over here, I can make that choice. And so I started to speak out. And if you go on my website, you'll see that I have a few chapters of my book. And then this is us here in Ohio together, where I just talk about the latest things that I've done. But I noticed something weird when I started to get into this activism world, and Mark sort of touched on it at the beginning. What I noticed is that Islam wasn't being treated like all the other religions. Islam was a sacred cow. It was totally fine for Ben Affleck to make a movie called Dogma where he criticized Christianity quite viciously. But when Sam Harris, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with that famous Sam Harris episode, Bill Maher episode where Sam Harris and Ben Affleck were his guests. And Bill Maher and Sam Harris were talking about Islam, and they were criticizing it in a very honest, factual manner. And Ben Affleck lost his mind, totally freaked out. He was like, "You're gross and racist. These people just want to eat sandwiches." And the next day, on my Facebook account, all of my friends were happy. They were like praising Ben Affleck because he shut down that horrible, gross, and racist Sam Harris guy. And that's when I realized, hang on a minute. This whole world has gone crazy. You guys know Seinfeld? You know when Elaine stood up when everybody was eating their chocolate bars with a knife and fork and she was like, "Have you all gone mad?" That's how I felt. And I also felt a sense of responsibility too, because this was my friend group. I should have, I had never told anybody that I used to be Muslim before. But I felt like I should start sharing it. I should start telling people, because we can't have this happening. We need to have Islam be criticized just as much as we criticize every other ideology. And I just wanted to note also that Lalo made this meme. So this idea of people have rights, ideas don't have rights, for some reason only starts to get muddled when we're talking about Islam. So if you're an ex-Scientologist and you talk about Scientology, nobody assumes you hate Scientologists, right? If you're an ex-Catholic and you talk about Catholicism, nobody assumes you hate Catholics. But as soon as I start to talk about Islam and the problems with this religion and the theocracies that are Islamic and the oppression of the people that live under them, etc., it means that I hate Muslims, I'm spreading hate, this was just because you had a bad experience, now you're painting all Muslims with the same brush, yada, yada, yada. Nobody gets that when we're talking about any of these other ideologies. And I think the reason why that confusion happens is because we're so far removed from that world. I'm just going to skip forward for 1 second. I think that when we think of Muslims, we just think of everybody on the left here. And we don't realize that Muslims come from hundreds of different countries. And each one of those countries has a distinct culture, has a distinct language, food, music, art, traditions. And Islam comes along and sort of dampens it all with a black shroud. It's on top of their culture. Islam itself is not a culture, it's a religion. And I think this is where the confusion lies. So it's not nearly as confusing when we talk about Catholicism, for example, because that's more of a context you're familiar with. So if I talked about a Catholic person from the Philippines or from Mexico or from Chile or from Italy, you would naturally know, obviously, those people have completely different cultures. They just share a religion. And when you want to celebrate those different cultures, you're going to go ahead and celebrate it with talking about their different foods or their different music or their different ways of, traditions, dancing, etc. You're not going to be celebrating their religion. So here's an example of what happens when that confusion, how dangerous it can be. This is Iran in 1979 when the women were protesting against the forced hijab. Women as far as the eye can see, and men as well, plus up in the balconies. Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets marching against this. They don't want to be forced to wear a hijab. Meanwhile, in the free secular country of the United States of America, we have well-meaning liberals in the Liberal Women's March taking a symbol of freedom, the American flag, and using it as a hijab, thinking that they are in solidarity with human beings, with these women, with Muslim people. But in actuality, they're in solidarity with a religion. So this is a video I want to share with you. This is Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was a president in Egypt in the 1950s. It might be a little difficult to read the subtitles because it's in yellow, but I'll talk about it afterwards if it's not clear. But basically, just to give you a little bit of context, Gamal Abdel Nasser is speaking to Parliament here, and he's explaining to them about a conversation he had with the Muslim Brotherhood.
في سنة 53 كنا نريد فعلا مخلصين ان احنا نتعاون مع الاخوان المسلمين على ان يسيروا في الطريق الصحيح والطريق السليم. وقابلت المرشد العام للاخوان المسلمين وقعد وطلب مطالب. طلب ايه؟ اول حاجة قال لي يجب ان تقيم الحجاب في مصر وتخلي كل واحدة تمشي في الشارع تلبس طرحة.
So for those of you in the back, because the yellow subtitles are really hard to read, basically Gamal Abdel Nasser said that I met with the Muslim Brotherhood and they told me, you're the president, you need to make sure that every woman in your country wears a hijab, or a tarha, as they say in Egypt. That's the response.
كل واحدة تمشي.
So the response was laughter, and one person yelled out, "Tell him to wear it." And the response was clapping and laughter to that comment as well.
وأنا قلت له يعني إذا الواحد قال هذا الكلام بيقولوا رجعنا لأيام الحاكم بأمر الله اللي كان بيخلي الناس ما يمشوش بالنهار ويمشوا بالليل. أنا في رأيي إن كل واحد في بيته هو اللي ينفذ هذا الكلام. فقال لي لا، أنت باعتبارك الحاكم مسؤول. قلت له يا أستاذ أنت ليك بنت في كلية الطب مش لابسة طرحة ولا حاجة، ما لبستهاش طرحة ليه؟
So we said to the Muslim Brotherhood guy, "Mister, you have one daughter in university. She doesn't wear a hijab. Why don't you put a hijab on her?"
كنت أنت إذا كنت أنت مش قادر تلبس بنت واحدة اللي هي بنتك طرحة، عايزنا ننزل ألبس 10 مليون طرح في البلد نفس.
He got a standing ovation for that. He got a standing ovation for that. He said, "You have one daughter, one woman that you can't put a hijab on, and you want me to go and make every single 10 million women in this country wear a hijab?" And they started clapping, gave him a standing ovation. So the thought of making women wear hijab in Egypt was absolutely ridiculous, and they were totally against that idea. I don't know what happened to my presentation. There it is. Thanks. But of course now, like 90% of women in Egypt wear hijab. Because not only did the Muslim Brotherhood took over in Egypt, as you know, for a while with Morsi, and they got rid of him. And now we have Salafis there in Egypt. So it's like out of the frying pan into the fire. Not really, they're both shit, but... So this is Iran. This is one of the hashtags that's close to my heart. This is My Stealthy Freedom. So as you know, as you saw the women that were filling the streets, protesting against the forced hijab, they didn't succeed, and hijab is forced over there. So it started with this campaign where women would just post pictures of themselves on Facebook without a hijab on. That's it, nothing more. But just to feel like a little bit of activism there, right? Yeah, here it is. Here's my hair. What are you going to do about it? A lot of those women were fined, arrested, and some were even imprisoned. So when we talk about supporting women, instead of putting on an American flag as a hijab to support these women, we should be supporting women like this who are part of this campaign and are also in Saudi Arabia. Stop Enslaving Saudi Women, which is a campaign against the guardianship laws. I mean, women in Saudi Arabia don't just have to wear hijab, they have to wear niqab as well, so they're one step even worse. Saudi Arabia and Iran are the only two countries which are fully Sharia law. Over 50 other countries have aspects of Sharia, but not completely Sharia. There is an ayah